This Penn State Nebraska matchup is far and away from what I thought this could be when we were talking about it in the preseason. And are we 110% sure that Matt Rhule is out of Penn State's coaching search?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And today's crossover episode with Locked On Nebraska is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase.
Hello, this is a special crossover episode, Locked On Nebraska, Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks for making these podcasts your first listen every day, free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. I'm Connor Happer, Locked On Nebraska. This is Zach Seyko from Locked On Nittany Lions, getting things together here. Well, Zach, first of all, thanks for doing this. Thanks for jumping on. And once again, Nebraska and Penn State meet at an odd time. They haven't met at, very consistently since Nebraska's been in the Big Ten. And obviously it's been quite the tumultuous year for Penn State.
Nebraska, I don't think achieved all of its goals either, right? I won't speak for Nebraska itself, but it seems like getting, sneaking into the college football playoff. I guess extending Matt Rhule, that's a goal. But Dylan Raiola not finishing the season, right? That's a big part of it there. I thought this Nebraska team, if everything went well, I really envisioned this game as Penn State, being, maybe a one-loss team, two-loss team, potentially losing to the likes of Oregon and Ohio State at that point in time. Didn't realize Indiana would be this good. We had preseason stuff, and that Nebraska could be a really consequential game for both teams if Nebraska rolled in with one or two losses, and then this was kind of a statement game for either team or a clinching game. That ends up being Oregon and USC in the present, but that's kind of what I thought was the Oregon USC setup for this Penn State Nebraska game. And now it's not happening. It's kind of just it's a pride thing. It's a homecoming for Matt Rhule. So I wonder how that's going to go, right? When the emotions, the tensions for Penn State are pretty sky high right now with the uncertainty with what's going on. And then Matt Rhule being linked to the Penn State job. He extends with Nebraska. I've had people insinuate to me that that's still right, that's not even off the table yet completely. Extensions don't mean anything. What is it? He can still change his mind. So again, what are we going to see ultimately with Rhule's homecoming here?
Well, it's fascinating. And that hasn't been the talk around here. Obviously things change in a hurry, very fast as far as the college football coaching landscape is concerned. But he was asked earlier in the week about his emotions going back to his alma mater, and he played it cool. He said he hasn't really thought about it much, and he did have a pretty valid reason for that. He said, well, I've been back so many times. He coached against him at Temple and things like that, and so it's not like this homecoming for the first time, that type of thing. So I think Nebraska, as a team, will be able to keep the Penn State of it all down. This had an opportunity to be a really, really, really weird week. And it doesn't feel like we're there right now. But as you mentioned, Nebraska with their quarterback situation, it just got a little weirder over the last couple of days. The little brother of Dylan Raiola, Dayton Raiola, decommitted from Nebraska, and it's sort of popped up all these very interesting questions about the future and the future of the position and all of those things. So I guess I wonder if that's how the vibes are here. Nebraska generally, it's okay. It's a 7-3 team, and there's a lot on the table for it in these last two games against Penn State and Iowa. But I wonder what the conversation has been like in your territory, Zach, just considering James Franklin gets a job at Virginia Tech this week, and Penn State's, it was nowhere near their radar to just be battling to win these last two games to get to a bowl at this point. Is the conversation at all about the game this week in your part of the country?
Connor, this is the first time I'm getting to the game on my agenda, and I've been doubling up on episodes pretty much daily. It's your team every day. It's your team every day times 2 times 3. Yeah. And this is the first time that I've really thought about Nebraska, and it's not to dismiss the game, but man, Penn State doesn't have a permanent head coach. And and when bowl eligibility is on the line, right? I guess if Penn State was still fighting for something, they're 7-3, right? Maybe there's a backdoor into the college football playoff. We'll see when a 9-3 team ultimately gets in. Maybe it's this season, who knows? But and James Franklin, getting a job right away. Okay, it's not like he's searching or he's waiting or he's holding out, right? Because people say, oh, well, you can't, there's nothing worth talking about. There's everything worth talking about, because it's not only the fact that Penn State doesn't have its permanent head coach. And honestly, I don't know if this is Penn State putting up smoke screens, but we really don't have an inclination as far as who it could be. There's really no one that's trending. It's kind of one person one week, one person another. Again, it was Matt Rhule and Curt Cignetti right out of the gate. And then weeks later, it's, what is it, Bob Chesney at James Madison? Is it Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri, who has no connections to the Northeast? And then James Franklin's at Virginia Tech. Everything looks great. People have said that, watching the press conference of it and describing it as, I feel like I'm at the wedding, watching the wedding of my ex, right? This James Franklin press conference. And that's exactly how it feels, is like a relationship. They couple up and Penn State's still single, trying to find somebody better, so to speak. And what Franklin can do as far as recruiting, but not only that, gutting this Penn State roster. So in the scheme of things, when Penn State is, 4-6, just got its first Big Ten win, unfortunately, there's more priorities than what's on the field this week. And it's kind of been that way for the past few weeks.
Is there, I mean, we talked to some Penn State people throughout this process over the last month or so. And so it's good to catch up again. It doesn't feel like from the outside, talking about the future now, not so much about the game. Is there a leading candidate at this point? Is there even a person where the fan base can agree on someone at this moment?
No, there is not one candidate that, and from different respects. Okay, so if we're talking long shots, Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, if that just totally crumbles at the end of this, because that's the avenue, is that you need Alabama to fail for that to happen. It's not that, Penn State's going to go and poach and outbid Alabama and become this attractive destination where Kalen DeBoer is like, yeah, I'm going to willingly leave. It would be him being pushed out. So the people that say, well, there's no chance of that whatsoever. Okay, so that's like the disagreeable part of it. But then Bob Chesney. Okay, Bob Chesney looks great on paper. He's been a head coach for a while. He succeeded at every stop, but he's never been a Power 4 SEC Big Ten coach. So how's he going to manage a program like Penn State? Eli Drinkwitz. Does Eli Drinkwitz elevate you? He's not a Northeast guy. He's a Norman, Oklahoma, southeastern part of the country guy. And the rumors that I've heard is like, yeah, he's the leading candidate for Penn State, supposedly, but he also wants to stay in the SEC. He doesn't know that he wants to make the jump to the Big Ten. Is that all smoke? And is that smoke screens from agents trying to leverage Auburn or Florida or LSU with who he's allegedly interviewing with in this process? Is Penn State just kind of being used as a way to leverage other programs to get more money? Same thing with Bob Chesney being connected to UCLA. Brian Daboll, ex-New York Giants head coach, literally a Penn State dad. He has family connections to the university, but he's disgraced. He can't coach in the NFL. So that means he's automatically bad for a college football job. You just, there's not one candidate who will check everybody's box, but I still think there are good candidates and ones that could succeed. Bob Chesney is a good one. I like the idea of Kalen DeBoer a ton, but we'll see, since it's so unrealistic in most regards.
Man, a lot going on. These two teams always seem to meet at interesting times. The last time they played each other was during COVID, and Penn State had started this season just uncharacteristically
pretty the same. Yeah, pretty much the same.
Odd, super odd. And then of course there's, the oddest of them all about 10, 15 years ago in Happy Valley. So lot to get through from the storyline perspective, obviously, this game, but let's talk about the football part a little bit when we return here on this special crossover episode.
This episode is brought to you by Gametime. We all love college football. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle Then the game itself, endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why you got to use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. You can pull up Gametime, and in just a couple of taps, you'll see amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games for as low as $25. And if you've never been to a stadium, if you've never been to a venue, if you've never been to Beaver Stadium and you want to attend a Penn State football game, Gametime has this awesome feature where you can see your point of view ahead of time. You select your seats and you'll see what that view is going to look like before you go to buy them. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today.
All right, welcome back. Connor Happer and Zach Seyko with you here, talking a little Nebraska and Penn State. All right, so this game, let's just bounce this off of you, Zach. Feels like we're headed toward a very low possession, very defensive, very time-consuming, drive-heavy type of Big Ten football game on Saturday. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Cold weather, wind. It's a nighttime game. Again, emotions and just how important this is, because I kind of look at this like a championship of sorts for especially Penn State. Okay, this is Matt Rhule's on the other side. This is Penn State's been through it this season. So this is kind of the chance, with it being the last home game, it being a primetime game. Kind of surprisingly, I didn't think we'd get a late November nighttime game like this, but I'm grateful for it, right? I'm grateful for the opportunity to be there in person for that, despite how cold it's going to be. Nevertheless, Terry Smith being the interim head coach in Penn State, just kind of finally controlling the damage, so to speak, having an opportunity to say, hey, we're still a quality team. Just things didn't go our way. A lot of one-score losses. 1-point losses, for crying out loud. And you get that opportunity against Matt Rhule, against Nebraska, to still fight for bowl eligibility, but just send the seniors off in a right way. Pay respects to the crowd that showed up in droves, even though James Franklin got booed. It's not like people were absentee. They still showed up. They still tried to support the team as much as possible. And they were let down. But it was really telling at that Indiana game when this season, hey, it's over, lost cause. Yeah, sure, you have bowl eligibility. And there were definitely over 100,000 screaming fans that were supportive of the team from start to finish in Terry Smith. So there's a lot to play for personally for Penn State.
I think for Nebraska, it's a very interesting game, just considering they're pretty sizable underdogs, but you're going up against a 4-win team. And they have a really important game, I think, for them next week, and on a short week on Black Friday against Iowa. There's no thought about overlook. You can't overlook Penn State with the talent that they have. But if you ask Nebraska fans which game they'd like to win if you could only win one, it's undoubtedly the one that's on Black Friday. It's not this one. And so, I think that could springboard their offseason and all that type of stuff as they head toward a bowl game. But I think Nebraska has a unique sort of opportunity. They haven't had really any success in these games where they're just, if Vegas doesn't expect them to show or doesn't expect them to win, they're, greater. I did the math. I looked it up the other day. If Nebraska is greater than a touchdown road dog, their last 30 matchups, they're 2-28 straight up. So, and the last win was against Iowa a couple years ago, and then the win before that was in 2005. And so it's been a while since they've won one of these type of games. And with that being said, Penn State might be the most vulnerable team that they've played in that category. I want to know from you, Zach, how has it turned a corner a little bit? Have they found themselves? Is Grunkmeyer settling in a little bit? How are things looking from a football perspective in the fallout of the season that was about a month ago now?
No, you nailed it from the speculation point. Grunkmeyer, being a first-time starter, went up against a top 5 Iowa defense on the road. His first game starting was at Kinnick on a moment's notice. And then you get 2 weeks to prepare for Ohio State, but it's the number 1, conservatively number 2 defense in Ohio State. And then you play a top 3 team in Indiana and, conservatively speaking, a top 15 defense, even though that's at home. And Grunkemeyer, you've seen progress. Okay, maybe not against Ohio State, but you saw significant progress in the second half of the Indiana game. Looked good enough. Again, Penn State, I think they were just, let's just win a game. We don't care about style points, anything like that, trying to get Grunkemeyer into as much rhythm as possible. Once they got the lead, they were willing to sit on it, with Kaytron Allen just kind of running away with it. I mean, if anybody's having a great season, it's Kaytron Allen out of the running back spot. And he could break the record at home for the all-time. He'd be the all-time rushing leader in Penn State history. Nicholas Singleton could be the all-time rushing touchdown leader in Penn State history as well. So there's a little bit of history on the line against Nebraska, and you'd like to do that at Beaver Stadium. You don't want to go and do that on the road. I mean, nevertheless, they'd try to get it done before the end of the season here. But yeah, when Terry Smith took over, they set out to make significant changes, and those changes, it's going to be a struggle when you try to make changes on the fly against Iowa, top 5 defense, number 1 defense in Ohio State, and a top 3 team, top 15 defense against Indiana. And you actually saw the progress against one of those elite teams. And then against Michigan State, you didn't need all of that to come together, but you still saw elements of it. They had a 75-yard bomb from Grunkemeyer to Devontae Ross, the speedy receiver in the rotation there. So that's kind of, and Jim Knowles' defense, they're simplifying it to allow them to be more explosive and aggressive and just to attack, because these Penn State football defenders just love to attack. I've been impressed with how Penn State's just been able to salvage something, and they've shown serious progress, which is why I'm confident in their abilities against Nebraska on Saturday.
It's interesting, and then you look at it from a setup, and you look at Penn State's edge rushers, and those guys are so talented, and Nebraska's struggled so much at the tackle position this year, keeping their quarterback upright. Dylan Raiola goes out with a broken leg a couple weeks ago, and they turn to TJ Lateef, who is a totally different, style of quarterback and brings you a new look. He got his first, sort of exam last week against UCLA, a bad defense, especially against the run, and they kept him on schedule all day long. I mean, he didn't throw an incompletion until, the third quarter of that game. I guess this is 2 weeks ago now. Nebraska had a bye week. So I wonder if, how Nebraska is able to mitigate some of what Penn State's able to do off the edge with those guys again, with their running quarterback. It's an added thing that Nebraska desperately needed coming into this game, because I don't know if, Dylan Raiola survives this one, even if he was healthy, with the way that Nebraska's tackles have been playing against the pass rush.
You say mobile quarterback and Penn State in the same sentence, and that just gave me shivers down my spine. Penn State has had no answer for any sort of quarterback that knows how to use his legs. Okay. We don't have this in common. You beat UCLA. Okay. Penn State, that's where that really materialized. And against Dante Moore in Oregon as well. But that's why Penn State lost that game, because they just couldn't contain Nico Iamaleava. And even if the tackles aren't great, it's mostly it's twofold. Penn State and the quarterback spy, it's a foreign concept. But also the defensive ends don't really contain that well. Denai Dennis Sutton's been great for the most part, again, in a season where there's just not a lot of team results, but individually, Denai Dennis Sutton looks like a pro NFL defensive end that, with the upside, maybe he is able to get into the first round. That's his ceiling. He could be a first round defensive end, I believe. Regardless, when Penn State and mobile QBs, when they face mobile QBs, it's been horrible. It's been terrible. And TJ Lateef, who has that rushing upside, even if the offensive tackles haven't been, if he's just able to see the running lanes, he'll be fine. And that is a major issue for Penn State and a big concern of mine, talking about the X's and O's of this.
All right. So when we come back, let's make picks here. And I have that question, that bullet point there on the side. Who is it an upset for? Because it's an upset one way or the other, depending on which way you look at it. So we'll discuss that, make some picks when we return.
And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot and an even bigger payout. It keeps everything keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets. That is right. $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And that can be used on anything. NBA basketball, NFL football, college football. Lines are available for Penn State versus Nebraska this weekend. The Nittany Lions are a pretty decent favorite. 8.5 points on the spread, minus 320 on the money line as it stands right now, plus 265 if you're thinking Nebraska. The total is set at 44.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. And remember, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, here we go. Nebraska and Penn State on Saturday night, 6:00 on NBC. It gets the big game treatment this week, and like we've talked about for 20 minutes here, it's a little bit of a weird one. So I mentioned it there. Nebraska, as far as Vegas is concerned, is the underdog in this game, and quite a sizable one. But I don't know that they've ever been this much of an underdog to this type of team that had their coach fired more than a month ago. It's obviously still talented. What do you make of the number, Zach? And I guess, do you expect Penn State to hold up their end of the bargain as far as being the touchdown favorite in this game?
Yeah, and we've seen the line go against Penn State in favor of Nebraska too, because that opened up at 9.5, and now we're seeing it start to trend towards 7.5, being a one-score game. And I buy the steam. I mean, originally I was confident, like, yeah, Penn State beat Michigan State comfortably. Nebraska's without its starting quarterback. I would like to still believe and think that Penn State can win this one comfortably because I believe that they are the more talented team. But when you actually break down the X's and O's of it, okay, Matt Rhule in Nebraska, well-coached team. They have some receivers on the outside, and I thought this passing game would materialize a little more with some of the receivers they had with Hunter, with Key, and it wasn't as explosive. It's still good, but it wasn't good enough in my opinion at times, and that's why I thought Nebraska, hey, it could be a one or two loss team coming into this game. And then you have the injury to the quarterback, and things really differentiate because they probably could have won that game against USC. But you still have this team is still going to ground and pound, run the football. Emmett Johnson, great, outstanding. Penn State has an outstanding running back in Kaytron Allen, and Nicholas Singleton still trying to find his way. Emmett Johnson has just been amazing this season for Nebraska. So that 1-2 punch, if they try to roll out some quarterback option and some design runs for Lateef, I mean, Nebraska could. This is a game that maybe we should even question if this is going to be a rock fight type of game. I know that they're going to run the ball first, but Penn State's offense is coming along. Nebraska should have its way in the ground game for the most part because Penn State's been struggling to stop the run one way or another. Maybe we could see some more points just because of how easy, I don't want to say easy, but how not difficult it will be to move the football.
I think my assumption is both coaches, with each having backup quarterbacks going into this game, by the way, are probably just going to play it a little conservative. But you're right. I mean, the defenses are certainly capable of breaking. I mean, Nebraska's given up countless explosive runs this year. It's hurt them in the games that they have lost. Jaden Mayava got going on a couple runs against Nebraska when USC came to Lincoln and beat them, and Justice Haynes popped off, and Jordan Marshall popped off a couple big runs for Michigan when they came to Lincoln and beat Nebraska, and those are runs that they wish that they could have back. And you look at Allen and Singleton. I mean, those guys are outstanding players. And I think what really scares Nebraska fans is Allen going for 180 plus last week. Yeah. So, I mean, people look at that and they say, well, Nebraska I don't know if they could hold up against that. And it's not so much that they can't, physically stop the run from a personnel standpoint. It's just a lot of times they'll get stop, and then one will bust for them. So I think it'll be a war of attrition in that regard, and who wants to kind of stick to it the most.
Especially when it's cold too, right? You don't want to be taking a hit from a bruising running back, whether that's Johnson or whether that's Kaytron Allen, when it's going to be cold like that. So the lines are pretty sharp from the total standpoint, because when I'm trying to map it out, and I don't think either team gets to 30 unless they go to overtime, but something in the neighborhood of 24-21, either side, Nebraska or Penn State, is certainly reasonable. I think that's kind of where you got to start, is that this is a 24-21 kind of game, or a 24 or 24-20, somewhere in that realm.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I was looking at the recent history here, and there's been some points the last two times that these two teams have met, but we have a low 20s game in 13. There's Nebraska wins 32-23 and 12. And then there was the 17-14 game. We're talking field goals here. And I kind of feel like that's where we're headed in this game. Do you want to let's put out the prediction? Let's put it all to the head here. What do we think at the end of the day? Does Penn State or Nebraska get it done on Saturday night?
I'll go with Penn State with the home field advantage, and just seeing the offense and the defense come together. It is going to be a game where neither team gets to 30, but I think both teams can get into the mid 20s and maybe push it. I'll go 27-24 Penn State, which would cover that total. And because I think Nebraska is going to be able to push the pace in the ground game. And it's like, well, you got to respond. If you're Penn State, you don't want to fall behind. You want to be able to ground and pound. You want to be able to control the pace of the game, time of possession. And by proxy, it's just the way that these two teams kind of operate right now, where the opposing ground game, you're just going to get points. So it's not that it's going to, explosive plays and quick pace and all this stuff, up tempo. No, nothing like that. But you'll see explosive plays in the ground game and these defenses will just bend and eventually break and allow the points as it is. So give me Penn State 27-24. And I'm changing my idea now that we've kind of gone through it on the idea of the spread. I think that's a lot of points for a Nebraska team that is comparable to Penn State right now with where they are.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you. I'm going to go a little bit lower. I'll take Penn State 23-20. Like it's tight. It'll come down to a possession or two in the fourth quarter, something like that. And that's where the backup quarterback variance sort of comes into play. And so who knows? But I'll give the advantage to the team who is favored by as much as 9.5 at this point in Penn State. All right, Zach. Well, thanks for doing this. It's been good to catch up a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe Nebraska and Penn State will actually start playing each other more in the future, because this has been few and far between since Nebraska's been in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and that's been a surprising one, actually, that these two haven't met. These two haven't met as much, and I'm glad to see Matt Rhule. I like the storylines of it. I like the way that this game, with where it is in prime time and everything else, that Matt Rhule gets to come back to Penn State for this kind of moment that's consequential for both, Terry Smith and Matt Rhule. It's a former Penn State legacy versus former Penn State legacy. That's how I'm looking at it. So it's great over here on my side for the storylines.
All right, that's Zach Seyko. Check out Locked On Nittany Lions Daily. I'm Connor Happer from Locked On Nebraska. Appreciate you listening to this crossover episode. You can check out Locked On Big Ten as well. All of those part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.